Wish, Chapter 4. I figured Bertha was going to be mad at me for kicking that girl, but she surprised me by putting her arm around me and saying, "Tomorrow's a new day." Then she gave me a little squeeze and added, "Personally, I love those boots." She didn't say one word about my inappropriate behavior. Mama would have hollered at me and reminded me for the umpteenth time that I was a troublemaker like Scrappy. After supper that day, we had blueberry pie for dessert, and I got to make a wish. If you cut off the pointed end of a slice of pie and save it for last, you can make a wish when you eat it. I had learned that from my cousin Melvin, who swore it had worked for him when his brother ran off and got married and left him with the bedroom all to himself. I knew Gus and Bertha were watching me cut off that pointed piece and push it to the edge of my plate, but they didn't say anything. Even Bertha had been kind of quiet during supper. Maybe she really was mad at me for kicking Audrey. Maybe she was thinking, "The apple don't fall far from the tree." Maybe that night in bed, she and Gus would whisper to each other about how much I am like Scrappy. And what in the world had they gotten themselves into when they agreed to let me stay with them? After I ate that little pointed piece of pie and made my wish, I went out front to watch Gus do weeding in the vegetable garden. A fluffy black cat rubbed against my legs, purring up a storm. I wrote my name in the dirt with a stick and then scribbled it out. There wasn't one blade of grass in that yard, just dirt and rocks, with sprinkles of color here and there. Patches of wildflowers nestled around the clothesline posts, the pink blooms of a dogwood tree over by the driveway, a neat row of daffodils lined up like soldiers along the edge of the chicken wire fence that surrounded the garden. Gus whistled while he hoed around the tiny tomato plants, stepping carefully between the pole beans and zucchini that were just beginning to poke through the warm spring dirt. On my very first day in Colby, Bertha had said to Gus, "Let's take Charlie on a tour of the garden." So I had followed along behind them while they pointed out each little plant, telling me how the pole beans were going to climb up the twine and the zucchini would have giant yellow flowers. I had nodded and said, "Oh, Cause what else can you say about vegetables in a garden?" But Gus, you would have thought that was the Garden of Eden out there the way he took care of it, examining each new leaf on the okra plants or moving a squash vine off of the walking path. So while I scribbled in the red dirt, Gus whistled and hoed. Every now and then he tugged on the bill of his cap or swatted at mosquitoes. I could hear Bertha in the kitchen talking to some of the cats while she fed them, scolding one of them for killing a bird, telling another he was getting too fat. I was about to go back inside when something caught my eye. There was movement behind the tangle of shrubs that separated the yard from the woods. The black cat darted off, disappearing behind the shed over by the garden. I stood real still and squinted into the darkness of the woods. All of a sudden, a dog poked its head out from behind the bushes, a skinny brown and black dog with long, floppy ears, the same dog I'd seen fighting that afternoon. He looked at me and cocked his head. I took one slow, tiptoeing step toward him. He ducked his head back a little, watching me. I took another step, and quick as lightning, he ran off into the woods. "Dang it," I said. "You say something?" Gus called from the garden. "There was a dog over there." I pointed to the bushes. "Brown and black? Floppy ears?" "Yeah," I said. "Did you see him?" "No, but I've seen him plenty of times before." "Who does he belong to?" Gus propped the hoe against the fence and sat in a lawn chair in the yard. "Just an old wild stray," he said. "Been hanging around here for months. Bertha keeps putting table scraps out for him. He don't mind eating her meatloaf, but he don't want nothing else to do with her. I looked toward the woods. I bet I can catch him, I said. Gus took off his baseball cap and scratched his head. That old mutt is mighty skittish. If I can catch him, can I keep him? I think that dog would rather be a stray, he said. But I knew better. I knew what it felt like to be a stray, not having a home where somebody wanted you. He was a fighter, like me. That dog and I had a lot in common. I was suddenly overwhelmed with love for that skinny dog. I made a solemn vow and promised to myself right then and there, that dog was going to be mine. And that is the end of Chapter 4 of Wish.
Hi, scholars. It's time for Chapter 5 of Wish. Listen along as we continue to find out what happens to our main character, Charlie. Here we go. Chapter 5. I thought I was glad when the weekend came because I didn't have to go to school. But then Bertha told me we were going to church on Sunday. I hadn't been to church since I was little. Scrappy never wanted any part of it, calling those people do-gooders and Bible thumpers. But Mama took me and Jackie for a while. I didn't remember much about it except Jackie whining and complaining on the way there until Mama slapped her legs and told her to hush up. But then Mama got too nervous to drive and wouldn't take off her bathrobe. She wouldn't even comb her hair. So we just stopped going. When I walked into Bertha's kitchen on Sunday morning, she looked me up and down, up and down, and said, oh dear. Then she wiped her hands on her apron. Honey, do you have a dress? I looked down at my jeans that were too short and my t-shirt that used to be Jackie's, so it was too big, and I just shook my head. Bertha flapped her hand at me. Oh, honey, it's okay. We're going to go shopping this weekend. Don't worry about it. Then Gus came in the kitchen, and I didn't hardly even recognize him. He had on a coat and tie instead of his usual muddy boots. He wore some laced-up black shoes. They were buffed and they were shiny. He could have passed for one of those fancy rich bankers over in Riley, except for the garden dirt under his fingernails and his hair squashed flat from his baseball cap. He sat at the kitchen table and Bertha kissed his cheek. Mwah! Well, look at you, she said, making him blush and swat her hand off his shoulder. He kept pulling at his collar and wiping sweat off the back of his neck. After breakfast, we headed down the mountain to Rocky Creek Baptist Church. When I got inside, I knew right away why Bertha said, oh dear, when she saw me that morning. It made sense. The other girls were wearing what? What do you think they were wearing? Do you remember? What did Bertha ask Charlie if she had? That's right, a dress. All the other girls in church wore dresses. I couldn't look anybody in the eye, knowing my face was beet red and my jeans were all wrong. I sat on the hardwood pew, sandwiched between Gus and Bertha. While the organist played church music, more and more people filed in, smiling and nodding at one another. Then Bertha poked me and whispered, hey, they're the Odoms. I glanced up to see Howard and his family carrying their Bibles and making their way to the pew across the aisle. 5 boys, slicked down hair. Hey, do you see that connection? Chapter 5. How many boys are there in the Odom family? You guessed it, 5. 5 boys with slicked down hair poking each other and clomping too loud in their Sunday shoes. Their mama chatted with folks, asking about their sick grandmas and making on over their babies. Oh, look at you, little cute little baby. while their redhead daddy mopped his face with a handkerchief. After a prayer and a hymn, the kids had to go to their Sunday school classes. Imagine my surprise when I got to my class, and there was Audrey Mitchell. She looked at me all wide-eyed, like I was a Martian, like right off of a spaceship. So I sat from far away from her as I could. Then Howard came in with his up-down walk and sat next to me. On Sundays, our Sunday school teacher was a gray-haired, wrinkly-faced woman named Miss Mackey. She didn't waste 1 minute telling everybody that my name was Charlie Reese and please welcome me to their church family. Then she taught us a song called Good Old Noah. Can you sing that? Good old Noah, good old Noah. Howard sang louder than anybody. And personally, I thought it was a little embarrassing, but nobody else seemed to pay him any mind. After that, Miss Mackey told us we were going to play a game called Bible Detective. She would read questions from her Bible detective cards, and whenever you answered and got one right, you got a Bible buck. Sounds familiar? A $1 Bible buck? When you got enough Bible bucks, you can cash them in for a prize. You remember, Dragons, what our prizes are? Our prize for a $20 $20. Do you remember? When she read the questions, the boys fidgeted and the girls whispered and giggled in their dresses. I just kept quiet in my ugly jeans. How many braids were in Samson's hair? Miss Mackey read. Name the man who went down into a pit on a snowy day to kill the lion. And what book, chapter, and verse can we read about a winner of a beauty contest becoming a queen? Howard's hand shot up every time, but I knew for sure I was never going to win any Bible books. So after Sunday school, all the grown-ups and the kids gathered in the fellowship hall. Bertha paraded me around like I was some kind of beauty queen, introducing me to everybody and making on over me and saying how lucky she and Gus were to have me staying with them. People nodded and said, ain't that nice? And stuff like that. But I bet they were wondering why my own mama and daddy couldn't even take care of me. And did I know that girls didn't wear jeans to church? When Bertha introduced me to Howard's mama, she hugged me and said Howard had told her all about me, and she craned her neck, looking around the room. Mr. Odom must be outside. I'll never catch those wild boys of mine long enough to introduce you. Some of the Odom boys chased each other around the room, their ties loose and their shirt tails flapping. They grabbed brownies off of paper plates while Howard showed everybody his Bible books. But you come on by the house anytime, okay? Mrs. Odom said. Bertha grinned at me. Now, wouldn't that be nice, Charlie? I nodded and said, yes, ma'am, because I knew that's what I was supposed to say. When we finally climbed into the car and headed back to the mountain towards home, I scanned the woods and yards along the way, hoping I'd see that stray dog again. But I didn't. What I did see, though, was a truck full of hay. Jackie's friend Casey told me if you count to 13 when you see a truck full of hay, you can make a, what's the title of the book? Wish. That's right. So, of course, that's exactly what I did. Things at school seemed to get worse every day. My homework papers came back all marked up by Mrs. Willoughby in a red pencil, and notes like, see me and try again. Sometimes I didn't even do my homework. It just seemed like a waste of time. I wasn't gonna be there much longer, so why do the work? Once in a while, Bertha asked me if I had homework, and I was pretty good at just, shrugging my shoulders and changing the subject. Besides, I was used to getting marked up papers like that because back in Riley, I wasn't exactly, student of the year. Jackie was the only one who ever fussed at me for not going to school or not doing my homework. But I reminded her that she was not my mother, so she should leave me alone. When my teacher called the house to tell Mama how bad I'd done on my math test or ask why I hadn't turned in my book report, Mama would holler and carry on for about 5 minutes. And she'd just throw up her little skinny arms and heave a big sigh before she said, what's the use? Then she'd shuffle out of the room in her bedroom slippers, muttering about how she didn't deserve the aggravation. At least in Riley, I had friends at school. But here, when I sat at the table in the cafeteria, girls made faces like they smelled something bad and they slid their trays away from me. Most days I pretended like I had a stomachache and I spent the afternoon in the nurse's office, drawing stars and hearts on my arm with a marker. Can you connect with her? Have you ever felt like that? Have you ever felt fake sick? Have you ever drawn any stars on your arm with a marker? At recess, Howard followed me around, reminding me he was my backpack buddy and asking questions a mile a minute. Did you ever visit your daddy in jail? Why ain't your sister here too? You want some of my Bible books? Sometimes I answered him, sometimes I didn't. The thing about Howard was everything just kind of rolled right off of him. It's like nothing bothered him, not one tiny bit. It was clear nobody at school wanted much to do with him. But he didn't seem to mind. His brother Dwight was always surrounded by cussing, punching, ball tossing, fist bumping boys, but Howard never joined them. A couple of times when I rode into town with Gus and Bertha, I'd see his older brothers, Burl and Lenny, tossing a football or shooting hoops with their friends. But Howard, he would be sitting on the steps, scribbling in a notebook over by the garage, fiddling with his bicycle. Bertha had commented on him one day when we drove by. Oh, that poor boy. He's too much of a loner, she said. Nothing wrong with that, Gus said. Bertha shook her head. Not for a child. Children need friends. Bertha sighed. Oh, I just don't get it. He's just as sweet as he can be. I bet it's because of that up-down walk, I said. Well, that's mean, she said, and turned around to face me. You're going to make so many new friends here in Colby, Charlie. I just know it. I stared out the window and pretended like I wasn't even listening to her go on and on about the things I could do, like Girl Scouts and 4-H. She told me about her friend Jonelle, who lived in Fairview and had a daughter my age. We could visit them some Saturday if we wanted to. Or maybe we could go to the mall down in Asheville. On and on and on and on she went, talking as if my life in Colby was going to be like living at Disney World. Really? Disney World? You're gonna talk that girl's head plumb off, Bertie, Gus said. Bertha laughed and slapped him playfully on the arm. Where do you think that dog is? Wrong person. Where do you think that dog is? I asked Gus. Could be anywhere, he said. That mutt gets around. I'd been looking everywhere for that stray dog. I'd seen him twice since that day he came to Gus and Bertha's, but both times he darted off in the woods before he saw me. He sure loves my meatloaf. I can tell you that, Bertha said. He licks that pan clean and then hightails it out of there so fast, I could hardly get much as a glimpse of him. I leaned back against the seat and sighed. I bet I was never going to catch that dog. I bet I was never going to pet that dog. And what if I did? Could I really keep him? Mama would probably have a hissy fit. But I bet Scrappy would call from jail and tell her to stop yammering and let me have a dog if I wanted one. Then, as we were turning into the main road into town, I saw a black horse out in the field, eating grass and swishing his tail at the flies. I shook my fist at it 3 times, and I made, guess what she made? A wish. That was the rule for black horse wishing. So, see, if you see a white horse, you just make a wish. But for a black horse, you got to shake your fist at it 3 times. I'd learned that one from Scrappy, which made me a little skeptical. But I did it anyway. I shook my fist and made a wish. And scholars, that is the end of chapter 5, Wish. Keep listening along to see what happens in chapter 6. Bye.